On this Friday night, struggling to survive. Sunwing suspends flights.
It's pretty surprising development.
With many Canadians still stranded abroad.
A lot of the people here are starting to really struggle mentally, some physically.
Trump's taxes, what the documents reveal about the former president's business failures. Bad influence.
The Matrix has attacked me.
Why controversial TikTok star Andrew Tate is under arrest in Romania. And flashback to the storm of the century, how 2022 might be a sign of things to come.
Global National with Farah Nasser. Reporting tonight, Chris Galis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Amazing we're still talking about it, but the chaos that emerged from last week's winter storm is still very much a reality for many Canadians stranded abroad tonight. While several airlines experienced disruptions and cancellations, Sunwing is facing backlash from thousands of customers as it continues to struggle to bring people home. The airline tells Global News tonight it hopes to have most, if not all, remaining passengers home by Monday, but calls are still growing for Ottawa to take action with so many people left in limbo. Neetu Garcha has our top story.
To be in that situation feeling helpless is a very uneasy feeling.
Rod and Rochelle Perkins finally returned home to BC Thursday after a trip to Cuba, which they say took an unsettling turn. After handing over their visitor visa at the airport to fly home Wednesday, the flight was cancelled. Without visas or a flight home, they say they were left to the mercy of Sunwing.
We could not separate from the rest of the passengers.
Of the plane, yeah.
So they put us through a side door in the Cuba airport. We got all on a shuttle and they took us to a resort that we weren't even familiar with, a hotel that we weren't even familiar with, and we couldn't leave that hotel.
Over in Mexico, Nick Dazovic says communication from the same airline is still inconsistent.
There's about 500 people in the hotel trying to get out.
The Canadian Soccer Hall of Famer's one-week family vacation turned into nearly 2 weeks because of cancelled flights.
People are saying, what are you guys worried about? You're in an all-inclusive down in Mazatlan. But, a lot of the people here are starting to really struggle.
Sunwing said it's navigating unprecedented operational challenges and that 40 recovery flights were planned for this week. But on Thursday, the airline announced it's suspending its operations in Saskatchewan and Regina until after February 3rd.
It's pretty surprising development. 5 weeks of canceled operations is pretty dramatic.
In a statement, Premier Scott Moe called it a very irresponsible decision by Sunwing and that the provincial transportation minister has been in touch with the company and Ottawa, asking for a detailed plan of how and when passengers from Saskatchewan will get back, adding they expect Sunwing to appropriately compensate everyone. The airline is offering refunds to customers with flights already booked, but this passenger rights advocate is recommending they refuse those refunds.
Recommend passengers not to take a refund, but insist that Sunwing provide them with alternate transportation or pay for it. We are not talking here about situations like weather. We're talking here about business decisions, economic decisions, and Sunwing made a bad bet, bad gamble. It's time to pay the bill.
I really think of Plan B and Plan C now. That's for sure. When we head out of the country, make sure the worst case scenario is covered, which just was.
As passengers like Rochelle and Rod rethink how they plan their future travel. Neetu Garcha, Global News.
Hundreds of first responders honored a fallen Ontario officer today. Constable Greg Pierce-Challa died in the line of duty, protecting his community. One of the alleged killers was out on bail at the time, and that's sparking calls to reform the system. Taria Isri reports.
Red and blue dotted Highway 400 as a police procession escorted OPP Constable Greg Pierce-Challa home. A black hearse carried his body from the Forensic Centre in Toronto back to Barrie and his mourning family.
They never know when they leave home. They may in fact not even come home at the end of their shift.
First responders and members of the public lined overpasses to pay their respects. The rookie officer was gunned down on his first official day alone on patrol. The fifth police officer in Canada to be killed on the job since September.
It's very distressing, and we all need to stand up.
Pierce-Challa was responding to a call about a stolen vehicle on a rural road a half an hour from Hamilton. That's when police say he was ambushed. Pierce-Challa was 28 years old. Brandy Stewart-Sperry and Randall Mackenzie are facing first-degree murder charges. Mackenzie was out on bail on charges of assaulting a police officer and possessing a firearm.
We're really we're in shock over this, and you know, we're angry. We're angry that this could happen.
Pershala's death is renewing demands for bail reform.
We just can't have people over and over and over again being released out into the streets before the paperwork is even done.
The Liberals changed the law 3 years ago to modernize the bail system, clear up backlogs, and stop the overrepresentation of vulnerable populations in Canadian jails.
We have to find a very careful balance between the rights of people who are safe to release and them being released quickly, and those people who have an established history of being violent.
The Liberals say they're looking at ways to improve the bail system.
Your Conservatives are following this very...
While opposition leader Pierre Poilievre insists the current policy is failing.
I regularly meet police officers across Canada who tell me that they often have to rearrest the same person in the same day.
Pershala will be laid to rest Wednesday, a death that shattered the police community and reignited a national debate. Taria Isri, Global News, Ottawa.
4 people are dead, including 2 children, after a fire in Hamilton, Ontario. The fire broke out just after 11 o'clock last night, with crews arriving to the townhouse unit fully engulfed and reports of people trapped on the second floor. A total of 6 people were found inside. 2 are still in hospital in stable condition. An investigator with the Ontario Office of the Fire Marshal says it appears there were no working fire alarms in the home. The fire started somewhere on the main floor.
Obviously, the fire spread is pretty significant through the entire ground floor. So your ground floor, pretty much your kitchen, living room, stairwell, main floor, hallway, like all that's been pretty severely impacted.
Residents from neighboring units were evacuated but have since been allowed back home. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. To the United States now, where Americans are getting their first look at Donald Trump's tax returns. The release of 6 years of documents shows the former president lost millions of dollars and in some years paid little, if any, tax. Jennifer Johnson now with more on what the revelations could mean for Trump's future.
From private jets to living in massive mansions, former President Donald Trump is often claimed to be one of the wealthiest Americans. But now, after years of battling with Democratic lawmakers, Trump's tax returns have been released, painting a much different picture of the so-called billionaire businessman.
Here is the most powerful man in the world, the self-described clever genius who brags of his wealth almost daily. And he did not pay the taxes that the most modest wage earner in this country would pay.
The tax records show Trump claimed massive business losses, over $100 million in 2015, and he paid close to $1 million in taxes in 2018. But while living the lifestyle of the rich and famous, Trump paid just $750 in taxes in 2016 and 2017, and no taxes at all in 2020, the last year of his presidency. And that apparently wasn't the only time he didn't pay anything, as Hillary Clinton pointed out during the 2016 campaign.
And they showed he didn't pay any federal income tax.
That makes me smart.
Trump fought hard to stop his tax returns from being released to the public, even taking his battle all the way to the conservative-controlled U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled against him in November. Other presidents have routinely made their tax records public since the 1970s.
Americans should be greatly outraged by that and by the failure of the IRS under Trump to do its job to audit him the way they have audited other presidents.
The House Ways and Means Committee released nearly 6,000 pages of documents from Trump and his wife Melania's tax returns and his businesses. Trump fired back in a videotaped statement.
Although these tax returns contain relatively little information and not information that almost anybody would understand, they're extremely complex. The radical Democrats' behavior is a shame.
Other Republicans are warning Democrats will pay for this.
It seems to me that that obsession is taking form today and will have severe consequences.
Republicans take over the House in January and are already vowing multiple investigations into President Joe Biden and his son Hunter. But Democrats say this is all about accountability. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
The Competition Tribunal has cleared the way for the Rogers-Shaw merger to go ahead, but it might not be a done deal yet. The tribunal dismissed an application from Canada's competition watchdog seeking to block Rogers Communications' proposed $26 billion purchase of Shaw. The tribunal says the merger of the two telecommunications companies would not result in materially higher prices. The move still requires approval from Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, and the Competition Bureau says it has filed an appeal. A controversial influencer arrested on human trafficking charges. Coming up, how a public spat with environmentalist Greta Thunberg put the spotlight back on his alleged crimes. And they are gonna need a bigger boat. A West Coast fishing trip pulls up a giant from the deep. Controversial internet influencer Andrew Tate will spend at least another 30 days in a Romanian jail. The former professional kickboxer and noted misogynist was arrested yesterday on suspicion of human trafficking, rape, and forming an organized crime group. His high-profile arrest follows a viral spat he initiated with climate activist Greta Thunberg. Redmond Shannon reports.
Pitched battles in which armies go to war with machines of death and destruction.
In mid-December, before targeting Greta Thunberg on Twitter, Andrew Tate posted a trademark hyperbolic video to his millions of followers, promoting his latest get-rich-quick scheme.
Every single thing that exists out there inside of the Matrix is done so with a purpose.
The Matrix, a reference to the movie about a subjugated, brainwashed population. On Thursday night, during his arrest, he mentioned it again.
The Matrix has attacked me.
Still on brand, even as he and his brother were detained in connection with a human trafficking and rape investigation. Romanian prosecutors claim an organized crime group was sexually exploiting 6 people. Police video of the raid on Tate's home showing weapons, cash and fast cars.
I'm not going to go based on what I've seen.
The former kickboxer has long courted controversy. He was kicked off a British reality TV show in 2016 after a video emerged of him appearing to beat a woman with a belt.
People say, why do you live in Romania? And I explain my 5 reasons. One of them is the Me Too era.
Since then, his misogynistic comments have had him thrown off major social media platforms. He has said women are a man's property and that rape victims should bear responsibility for their attacks.
I get called Morpheus all the time in my DMs because I'm trying to wake people up.
But he has still made a fortune from that content. Tate's fans pay him to learn how to make ad revenue by reposting his most controversial clips, which has led to his sharp rise in prominence in the past year. An investigation from the Observer newspaper said his subscribers were told, "You want arguments, you want war."
It's worked out really well for the companies too, because they've made tons of money by placing ads next to his must-see content, because it's must-see not just for those who like it, but also for those who dislike it.
Despite Tate's misogyny, the sometimes free speech champion Elon Musk reinstated Tate on Twitter in November. While under arrest, someone has continued to post from Tate's Twitter account. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
The consequences of climate change. Ahead, a devastating storm's lasting scars on Atlantic Canada.
You're kidding! That is so huge!
Disbelief from those on board this fishing vessel off the coast of Vancouver Island as an unexpected visitor clung onto their catch as it was being reeled in.
When we first started pulling the trap up, it was super heavy. So we just thought it was a pretty full prawn trap. And then as it was like surfacing, we're like, oh my gosh, that is a huge octopus.
The giant Pacific octopus was released after putting on quite a show for the fishing group. However, this brief appearance will not be forgotten. It's already racked up more than 30 million views online. Well, this fall, Atlantic Canadians watched in horror as Hurricane Fiona bashed their homes and businesses, causing one of the most expensive climate disasters in the world this year. Since the storm, people are nervous about the future and wondering what they can do to protect themselves for the next time. Ross Lord reports.
For Kevin Jewell, windy days like this one are unsettling.
They remind him of Fiona, the storm that destroyed his dairy barn.
I'll have to admit I was scared. You just held your breath, waiting for it to subside, and then it would come again. It was relentless, and and now when you hear wind, I mean, you think, I think we're going to have to think differently.
Thinking differently has become unavoidable across Prince Edward Island, where some people went weeks without power, and in other Atlantic Canada communities. Post-tropical storm Fiona typifies the dreadful reality of more powerful storms attributed to global climate change. The insurance industry says Fiona caused an estimated $660 million in damage, the most costly storm on record in the region. And that doesn't include additional destruction that is not covered by insurance. In Port aux Basques, Newfoundland and Labrador, town officials say 81 houses were destroyed or damaged beyond repair by Fiona's terrifying wall of water. One woman was swept out of her house and died. Others are now afraid of the ocean they'd always embraced.
Especially for residents maybe in the highly impacted areas, they're having a fair bit of difficulty with when there's forecast of bad weather.
People in Port aux Basques thought their storm of the century was a 2021 rainstorm that washed out sections of the Trans-Canada Highway, stranding the town in both directions. Less than a year later, Fiona redefined the term historic storm, gouging out chunks of landmass, leaving more than 50 other homes vulnerable to devastation next time.
We have to look at what the future of that looks like now as we go forward in a rebuild.
In the days after Fiona's devastating sweep through Atlantic Canada, the federal government promised disaster assistance in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
We need to have transparency and accountability, absolutely, but we also need to get the money to families as quickly as possible, especially with winter coming, especially with some of the impacts to community infrastructure, and we're going to be there.
Not everyone is convinced.
We don't know what, if anything, will be forthcoming from the federal government.
Osborne Burke says Fiona caused millions of dollars in damage to the fish plant he manages in Cape Breton. As they rebuild with additional reinforcements, Burke says insurance covers some but not all of the cost.
The frustrating portion for us to have to face with every day is we're continuing to rebuild, no understanding of what we're going to receive, if any.
The Progressive Conservative Nova Scotia government has released its own climate action plan intended to limit the prospects of future climate change devastation. The plan promises big cuts in greenhouse gas emissions with measures that include restricting the use of oil heat. To some climate analysts, the plan doesn't go far enough.
What we didn't see in this plan is a commitment to end outdated industries. We still have an open coal mine in this province. We have gold mines.
Back on PEI, Fiona's impact lingers. Mussel growers, who export more than $40 million worth of the shellfish annually, had hundreds of acres of future product washed out to sea. Kevin Jewell is still adjusting to the loss of his dairy barn.
It is a major blow to our annual income.
He estimates building a stronger barn on top of what's left of the old one will cost more than what his insurance company is willing to cover.
We're scared for a long time on the island.
As he navigates government assistance programs, Jewell is moving forward.
We could just get a roof on here before we get too much snow. It would be ideal.
Working toward a better new year, but more vulnerable than ever to the unpredictable force of Mother Nature. Ross Lord, Global News.
Guarded optimism. Next, what's most concerning to Canadians heading into the new year. As we near the end of it, how was 2022 for you? If you say pretty good, you're with the majority of Canadians who say the year wasn't bad for themselves and their families, according to Ipsos polling done exclusively for Global News. But there is still an overwhelming number of people who feel some trepidation heading into the new year. Global's Erica Vela looks at what's causing such cautious optimism.
Compared to previous years, how would you compare 2022?
It was fine.
After 2 years navigating the COVID-19 pandemic, life has appeared to return to normal. But for many, it doesn't equal a shift in attitude.
I think it was a time of some new things, getting back out there and being social again, but at the same time, I don't know, just feeling a little flat.
We've
come out of a pandemic, but we haven't come out of the pessimism.
Ipsos polling shows when looking back on 2022, about 2/3 of respondents say the year was good for themselves and their families. When it comes to the outlook for Canada, people are split. But in a year that has seen much turbulence with the war in Ukraine, people appear to have a more pessimistic opinion on the state of the world.
You name the hot button issues, also throw in global inflation, the global economy. It's a hot mess. That's the best way of describing it.
2022 has also seen a lot of economic uncertainty with soaring inflation, repeated interest rate hikes, and a looming recession. It has many wary of what's to come. 3/4 of respondents agree that 2022 has made them fearful for an upcoming recession, and that's higher for households with kids.
It's really a concern to me as a single mom. It's not been easy, so the recession is really, really crazy.
That talk has been in the air a lot, and so it's no surprise that people are in a sense afraid of a recession.
But experts are predicting a recession that is much more mild compared to those in the past.
Growth falters in the economy. Maybe the unemployment rate goes up 1% or 2%, but not 5 or 7, the way we've seen in these past recent recessions.
Polling shows many people also have job security on their mind, with 30% of people agreeing that 2022 has them worried about job security in the future.
It's going to affect a lot of people, and I think probably the governments, both nationally and provincially, need to do better to provide for people who are going to be affected.
Taking it day by day with hopes that 2023 brings on a more confident sense of optimism.
The new year is like today. It's overcast, a little bit rainy, but it's positive numbers, and hopefully that's the same for the year to come. Positivity.
Eric Vela, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Friday. I'm Chris Galis. Tonight's Your Canada is this beautiful snowy cabin near Emerald Lake, BC. Thanks very much for watching. Sonia Sunger will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. Have a good night and Happy New Year.